Welcome to the Vault of the Forgotten. Today we watch videos of the top betrayals in the Greek mythology. In the swirling mists of ancient Colchis, a love story was born, one forged in fire, magic, and a quest for the impossible. This isn't a fairy tale. This is the story of Jason, the golden-haired hero, and Medea, the sorceress who loved him too much. Their tale begins with a promise. Jason, a prince without a throne, arrives in Colchis on a divine quest to claim the Golden Fleece, a treasure guarded by sleepless dragons and fire-breathing bulls. A hopeless task for any mortal man. But Jason wasn't just any man. He was charming, and he caught the eye of the one person who could make the impossible possible. Medea, the king's own daughter. Medea was no ordinary princess. She was a priestess of Hecate, the goddess of magic. The winds whispered her secrets, and the earth bent to her will. When she saw Jason, she was utterly captivated. She saw a future in his eyes, a life far from her home. So she made a pact with him. She would give him the power to conquer the trials, to tame the beasts, and to seize the fleece. In return, he would swear an unbreakable oath to take her as his wife, to love her, and to be faithful to her for all eternity. Under the watchful eyes of the gods, Jason swore. And Medea delivered. She brewed potions that shielded him from fire. She sang ancient lullabies that put the dragon to sleep. She betrayed her father, her family, and her homeland, all for the love of Jason. With the golden fleece in their hands, they fled into the night, sailing away on Jason's ship, the Argo, toward his home in Greece. For 10 years, their life was the one she had dreamed of. They settled in Corinth, and she bore him 2 sons. Medea, the foreign sorceress, had found her place. She had given up everything, but she had Jason. His love was her kingdom, but kingdoms can fall. And oaths, even those sworn to the gods, can be broken. Jason's ambition, the very fire that Medea had once admired, began to burn again. He was a hero, yes, but he still craved power, security, and a legitimate place in Greek society. And Medea, the exotic enchantress from a faraway land, was an obstacle. He began to see her not as his savior, but as a political liability. Then came the offer, a new marriage, a strategic alliance. Jason was offered the hand of Glauce, the young, beautiful daughter of Creon, the king of Corinth. A Greek princess, a royal connection, a secure future. And just like that, Jason's eternal oath turned to dust. He told Medea he was leaving her. He argued it was for the good of their sons, to secure their place in the city. He cast aside their shared history, her sacrifices, her absolute devotion, as if it were nothing more than a passing affair. He didn't just break her heart, he shattered her world. The woman who had tamed dragons and defied kings was now in exile. A scorned wife, a foreigner with no home and no allies. The love that had been her anchor was now the very storm that threatened to drown her. But he made one fatal mistake. He forgot who she was. He had betrayed a woman, but he had scorned a sorceress. The same power she used to help him, she would now use to destroy him. Her grief curdled into a cold, terrifying rage. The air in Corinth grew heavy, thick with the scent of dark magic and a promise of vengeance. Medea's curse was not a simple spell whispered in the dark. It was a masterpiece of absolute devastation. She sent a wedding gift to the new bride, Glauce, a stunning golden-spun gown and a delicate diadem. But this was a gift from Medea. As the princess put on the beautiful robe, it burst into an unholy, magical flame, clinging to her skin and consuming her in agony. Her father, the king, rushed to save her, and the fire leaped to him too, burning them both to ashes in the throne room. The kingdom was in chaos. But Medea's revenge was not yet complete. She had one final terrible price to make Jason pay, to erase every part of him from the world, to inflict a wound so deep it could never heal. She looked at the 2 sons she shared with him, her own children. In the ultimate act of vengeance and despair, she took their lives, ensuring that Jason's lineage, his future, and his entire legacy would die with them. When Jason, horrified, rushed to confront her, he found her rising into the sky on a chariot pulled by sun-blessed dragons, a terrifying, divine figure of wrath. He was left with nothing. No wife, no sons, no kingdom, no honor, just the hollow echo of a broken promise. His story ends not in glory, but in lonely, pathetic ruin. A man haunted by the ghost of the woman who gave him everything, only to take it all away. Still on the top betrayals, picture this. A fleet of 1,000 ships sails pregnant with a wind that wouldn't blow. They wait, stranded at Aulis, their prows pointed toward the golden walls of Troy, an army of Greece's finest, restless, hungry for glory. And at their head a king, Agamemnon, mighty and proud. But the gods are silent. The sea is a mirror, still and mocking. A seer is consulted, his eyes clouded with prophecy. The goddess Artemis is angry. She demands a sacrifice. Not a bull, not a ram. A life for a wind. A daughter for a war. Imagine the message arriving back at the palace of Mycenae. A raven's wing casting a shadow over the sun-drenched stones. Clytemnestra, queen of Mycenae, sister to the beautiful Helen, reads the words. A lie wrapped in the sweetness of a wedding.
Her eldest, her beloved Iphigenia, is to be married to the godlike Achilles.
A cause for celebration, a mother's pride. So she travels. She brings her daughter, radiant and full of life, to the shores of Aulis. But there is no wedding aisle. There are no flowers. There is only a stone altar, and the glint of a sacrificial knife in her husband's hand. Can you feel her scream? The one that tears from her soul but never leaves her throat. She watches as her husband, the great King Agamemnon, chooses ambition over his own blood. He chooses the wind for his sails, the glory of war, over the light of his daughter's eyes. The knife falls, the wind picks up. The ships sail for Troy, and in that moment something in Clytemnestra dies, and something else, something far more ancient and terrible, is born. For 10 years the Trojan War rages. 10 years of songs and stories about brave heroes, about Achilles, Odysseus, and of course the great King Agamemnon. But what of the queen left behind? While Troy burned, a different kind of fire was being stoked in the heart of Mycenae. Clytemnestra did not simply weep. She did not wither in her grief. No, she ruled. She took control of the kingdom with an iron will her husband never suspected she possessed. And she was not alone. She found a partner in Aegisthus, Agamemnon's own cousin. A man with a blood feud against her husband's family. Their shared hatred was a poison that became an intoxicating wine. They were two broken pieces that fit together to form a weapon. For 10 long years they waited. They plotted. They nurtured their revenge like a precious, venomous flower. Then the news arrives. Beacons blazing on the mountaintops. A chain of fire screaming across the dark hills of Greece. Troy has fallen, the king is coming home. The city prepares a celebration. They roll out the crimson carpets, a path of royal welcome fit for a conquering hero. But Clytemnestra sees a different color. She sees the blood of her daughter. Every thread is a memory. Every step he will take upon it will be a step closer to his doom. He arrives triumphant, arrogant. He brings with him the spoils of war, including a new prize, the Trojan princess Cassandra, a prophetess cursed to speak the truth and never be believed. Cassandra takes one look at the palace and sees it all. She sees the blood already staining the walls. She screams of the axe, the net, the bath of blood. The guards laugh. Agamemnon, tired from his journey, ignores her ravings. He is a king, he is a conqueror. What could he possibly have to fear in his own home from his own wife? He asks for a hot bath to wash away the grime of war. Clytemnestra, the perfect doting wife, prepares it herself. She helps him into the steaming water. His guard finally down. He closes his eyes, sighing in relief. And that's when she strikes. She throws a heavy net, a fisherman's casting net, over him. He is entangled, helpless, a thrashing beast caught in a web of his own making. He bellows, but his voice is muffled. He is the mighty lion of Mycenae, trapped and powerless. And then she appears standing over him. Not as a weeping mother, but as a priestess of vengeance. In her hand she holds a double-headed axe, a labrai, the same kind of weapon used for sacrifice. An eye for an eye. A sacrifice for a sacrifice, one strike. For her stolen daughter Iphigenia, a second strike. For the long, lonely years of her grief. A third strike, a final prayer to the gods of the underworld, sealing his fate. The water turns red. The hero of the Trojan War lies dead in his own bath, murdered not by an enemy soldier on a battlefield, but by the queen he betrayed. Clytemnestra steps out from the steam-filled room, her hands and face spattered with his blood. She feels no guilt, she feels no remorse. She feels justice. She announces to the palace, to the world, I have done the deed. This wasn't a simple act of betrayal. This was a reckoning, a story whispered for centuries, a reminder that hell hath no fury. Like a queen whose love has been turned to ash, and from that ash rises a fire that will consume kings. In our story about betrayals, let us see how Paris betrays hospitality. In an age of gods and mortals where destinies were woven by the fates and kings ruled by divine right, a prophecy was whispered on the winds of Troy. A prophecy of a child, born to King Priam and Queen Hecuba, a child who would bring fire and ruin to their great city. That child was Paris. To save their kingdom, his parents made an unthinkable choice. They ordered the infant prince to be left on the slopes of Mount Ida. a sacrifice to appease the foreboding whispers of the gods. But the fates, it seems, have a cruel sense of irony. The boy was not destined to die. He was found, raised by a humble shepherd, growing into a young man of such breathtaking beauty that even the nymphs of the mountain couldn't help but stare. He lived a simple life, unaware of the royal blood that pulsed through his veins. But destiny, once set in motion, cannot be so easily diverted. The gears of fate began to turn at a wedding. The wedding of the mortal Peleus and the sea goddess Thetis. All the gods and goddesses of Olympus were invited, all except one, Eris, the goddess of discord. Furious at the slight, Eris crafted a plan for revenge. She forged a golden apple, and upon it she inscribed a single tantalizing phrase, "For the fairest." She tossed this apple of discord among the guests, and chaos erupted. 3 of the most powerful goddesses laid claim to it. Hera, queen of the gods, offering power and kingdoms. Athena, goddess of wisdom and war, offering victory and glory in battle. And Aphrodite, goddess of love, with her own far more tempting promise. To settle the dispute, Zeus, ever the diplomat, chose a mortal judge. A mortal far from the politics of Olympus. A simple shepherd boy known for his fairness and, of course, his beauty. Paris. The 3 goddesses appeared before him on Mount Ida, each more radiant than the last. Hera promised to make him the king of all Europe and Asia, a world at his feet. Athena promised him unmatched skill in battle and wisdom that would make him the most respected man alive. But then came Aphrodite. She leaned in, her voice a seductive whisper, and made a promise that stirred the heart of the young man. She promised him the love of the most beautiful mortal woman in the world. And who was this woman? Helen, the queen of Sparta, a woman whose beauty was so legendary it was said to be a gift from the gods themselves. A woman who was already married to Menelaus, the formidable king of Sparta. For Paris, a young man who had known only the simple life of a shepherd, the choice was intoxicating. Power, wisdom? What were they compared to a love that could rival the gods? He awarded the golden apple to Aphrodite. In that single moment, Paris sealed not only his own fate, but the fate of his city. Soon after, his true identity as the Prince of Troy was revealed, and he was welcomed back into the royal family, the dark prophecy all but forgotten in the celebration. As a prince, he set sail on a diplomatic mission to Sparta. King Menelaus welcomed him with open arms, honoring the sacred laws of hospitality, showering his guest with feasts and gifts, completely unaware of the serpent he had invited into his home. While Menelaus was away in Crete, Aphrodite fulfilled her promise. Paris, armed with his otherworldly charm, and Helen, perhaps enchanted by the goddess of love, perhaps a willing participant in her own story, fell into a passionate affair. When it was time for Paris to leave, he didn't go alone. He betrayed the trust of his host in the most profound way possible. He stole away in the dead of night, taking with him not only the treasures of Sparta's palace, but its greatest treasure of all, Queen Helen. When Menelaus returned, his home was empty, his bed was cold, and his honor was in ruins. The betrayal was absolute. This wasn't just a personal insult. It was a grave offense against the sacred laws of hospitality, a challenge to his power and his kingdom. His rage was immeasurable. He called upon his brother Agamemnon, the mighty king of Mycenae. He called upon all of Helen's former suitors, who had long ago sworn an oath to defend her marriage. 1,000 ships were launched. An army the likes of which the world had never seen set its sights on the impenetrable walls of Troy. All for a single act of betrayal. All for a stolen queen. Paris, the abandoned prince, had returned home, but he brought with him the very ruin the prophecy had foretold. The Trojan War had begun. 10 years of blood, sacrifice, and heroes clashing under the watchful and often meddling eyes of the gods. And it all started with a golden apple, a fateful choice and a love that would set the world on fire. Aside from Prometheus' betrayal to Zeus, let us see how Uranus betrayed his father. Before the gods, before humanity, before even time as we know it, there was only the vast, star-strewn emptiness of chaos. From this swirling void, 2 primordial beings emerged: Gaia, the earth, a nurturing, life-giving mother, and Uranus, the sky, a vast, star-dusted blanket that covered her completely. Together they were the first couple, the ultimate power. Their love was cosmic, their children monumental. First came the Cyclopes, one-eyed giants, masters of the forge, capable of harnessing lightning and thunder. Then came the Hecatoncheires, the 100-handed ones, beings of immense strength with 50 heads and 100 arms each. But Uranus looked upon these powerful, monstrous children not with love, but with fear and disgust. He saw them as a threat to his absolute rule. So one by one, as they were born, he took them and thrust them back into the depths of Gaia, deep within her womb, a dark prison known as Tartarus. Imagine Gaia's agony, her own children imprisoned within her. Her love for Uranus curdled into a bitter, simmering resentment. She pleaded with him, begged him to release their offspring, but Uranus, blinded by his paranoia, was deaf to her cries. His reign was absolute, and he would not tolerate any challenge, real or imagined. The pain became unbearable. Gaia's heart, the very core of the earth, ached with sorrow and rage. She knew she had to act, but she couldn't do it alone. She needed an ally, one of her own children, to rise against their tyrannical father. So, in secret, Gaia brought forth a new set of children, the Titans. 12 of them, 6 sons and 6 daughters. Unlike their monstrous older siblings, the Titans were beautiful and powerful, closer to what we might imagine as gods. Yet Uranus, ever fearful, intended to imprison them too. But Gaia was quicker this time. She concealed her youngest son, Cronus, and plotted her revenge. From her own essence, deep within the earth, she forged an unbreakable adamantine sickle. Its edge was sharper than any star, its curve like a crescent moon forged in rage. She gathered her Titan sons and presented her plan. "Your father has shamed us all," she whispered, her voice like the rustling of leaves and the grinding of stone. "He has locked away your brothers in darkness and brought me nothing but pain. Who among you has the courage to end his tyranny?" The mighty Titans, for all their power, cowered. The thought of raising a hand against their father, the embodiment of the sky itself, was unthinkable. They feared his power, his wrath, all but one. Cronus, the youngest, stepped forward. He was ambitious, clever, and he harbored a deep-seated resentment for his father's cruelty. He saw not just a chance for revenge, but a chance for power. "Mother," he declared, his voice steady and cold, "I will do it. I will end his reign and claim the throne for myself." A grim smile touched Gaia's lips. She handed him the great sickle. The plan was set. That night, Gaia would lure Uranus down to her, promising him an embrace of love. But it was a trap. Cronus and his brothers lay in wait, hidden in the shadows of the world. As Uranus, suspecting nothing, descended to lie with Gaia, Cronus sprang from his hiding place. With the adamantine sickle gripped tight, he moved with a speed that defied the cosmos. In one terrible, swift motion, he attacked his father. He seized him, and with the unbreaking blade, he severed his father's connection to the world, castrating him and ending his power in a single violent act. Uranus roared in agony and shock, his celestial form recoiling from the earth. The sky pulled away from the land forever. As he bled, drops of his divine blood fell upon the earth, giving birth to the Furies, vengeful goddesses of retribution, and the giants. The severed parts, cast into the sea, churned the water into a white foam, from which the goddess of love and beauty, Aphrodite, would later be born. But as Uranus retreated, vanquished and broken, he cursed his son. He prophesied that Cronus too would be overthrown by his own child, just as he had overthrown his father. A cycle of betrayal had begun. Cronus, now the ruler of the cosmos, stood victorious, the sickle still in his hand. He had freed his Titan siblings, but in a moment of supreme irony and hypocrisy, he refused to free the Cyclopes and the 100-handed ones from Tartarus. He feared their power just as his father had. He had become the tyrant he sought to destroy. The age of the Titans had begun, but it was an age born of betrayal, built on a foundation of fear and haunted by a chilling prophecy, a ticking clock counting down to the moment when history would inevitably and violently repeat itself. Cronus' son Zeus was yet to be born. In the dawn of time, before humanity learned to fear the dark, before civilization carved its name into the stone of the earth, there were the Titans, immense primordial beings of chaos and power, and among them one whose name meant forethought. Prometheus, he was not like his brethren. While others reveled in their raw power, Prometheus saw something more in the fragile, fleeting creatures that crawled upon the earth. He saw potential, a flicker of intellect, a yearning for more than just survival. He saw a reflection of the divine trapped in mortal clay. But the king of the gods, the mighty Zeus, did not share his vision. To Zeus, humanity was a mere trifle, an amusing but ultimately insignificant creation. He had decreed they would remain in ignorance without the tools of the gods, forever shivering in the cold, beholden to his whims. And chief among the forbidden tools was fire. Prometheus looked upon the suffering of his chosen people, their teeth chattering in the endless nights, their food raw, their minds shrouded in the mists of fear, and a defiant spark ignited within his eternal heart. He could not stand by, he would not. Under the cloak of twilight he made his ascent, past the watchful eyes of lesser gods through shimmering gates of pearl and gold. He wasn't seeking power or glory. He was a thief on a holy mission. His destination, the hearth of the gods, the very workshop of Hephaestus where the eternal flame of Olympus burned. He took a giant stalk of fennel, dry and hollow, a humble vessel for a celestial treasure. With a hand that did not tremble, he reached into the sacred fire and stole a single glowing ember. Down the mountain he raced, the stolen star hidden within the stalk, a secret sun against the coming night. He returned to the world of mortals, to the dark caves and the frightened faces. And there he unveiled his gift. He gave them fire, not just warmth for their bodies, but a light for their minds. In its glow they saw each other's faces clearly for the first time. They learned to cook their food, to forge tools, to ward off the beasts of the night. Art, science, community, all born from that single defiant spark. It was the dawn of humankind, but you cannot steal from a king without consequence. From his throne on high, Zeus saw the pinpricks of light dotting the dark earth. He saw the smoke of human campfires rising to the heavens like a challenge. And his fury was absolute. Prometheus was dragged to the edge of the world, to a lonely crag where the sun burned by day and the frost bit by night. He was chained with unbreakable bonds forged by the very smith whose fire he had stolen. His punishment was to be eternal, a warning to any who would dare to empower humanity again. And every day Zeus sent his great eagle to tear at the Titan's flesh, to devour his liver. And every night, because he was immortal, his body would heal, only to face the same torment with the rising of the sun. It was an agony without end. Yet even in his torment, Prometheus did not regret his choice. For with every shriek of the eagle, he could hear the distant echoes of humanity's progress, the clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the song of a poet, the laughter of a child around a warm fire. He had given them the spark, the fire of knowledge, of ambition, of hope, and he knew with the certainty of his foresight that this fire could never be extinguished. He had betrayed a god, but in doing so he had become the savior of all mankind. Have you ever felt a shiver down your spine? A sense of déjà vu so strong it feels like you're living a story written long ago? What if I told you the most infamous betrayal in human history wasn't just a political assassination, but a tragedy foretold by the heavens, an echo of a divine drama played out on Mount Olympus? We all know the story of Julius Caesar, a titan of Rome, a general who never lost, a leader who stared into the eyes of destiny and didn't blink. His ambition was a fire that threatened to consume the old world and forge a new one in his image. The Senate, the heart of the Roman Republic, saw this fire not as warmth but as a coming inferno, and at the center of their fear stood one man, Marcus Junius Brutus. Not just a senator, but Caesar's friend. Some even whispered he was Caesar's own son. Brutus was a man torn. He loved Caesar, but he loved Rome more. He was a descendant of the man who had driven out the last king of Rome, and the idea of a new king, a new tyrant, was a poison in his veins. This is where the mortal story blurs and the myth begins. Imagine the gods looking down from Olympus, not with indifference, but with a knowing, sorrowful gaze. They've seen this play before. Think of Zeus, king of the gods, wielder of the thunderbolt. His power was absolute, his reign eternal. But even he was not without his challengers. The Titans, his own kin, ancient and powerful, rose against him. A war that shook the cosmos. Brother against brother, family against family. Zeus had to cast his own father, Cronus, into the pit of Tartarus to secure his throne. A necessary betrayal, a divine coup? The line is thin, even for gods. Now look back at Rome. See Caesar, not as a general, but as a mortal Zeus, a man reaching for a power that would make him a god on earth. His ambition, like a thunderbolt, reshaped the world. And Brutus is the echo of that divine conflict. He is Cronus, the old guard, rising to strike down the new power. He is Prometheus, who defied Zeus for the sake of mankind, or in this case, for the sake of the Republic. He carried the weight of his ancestors, the burden of freedom on his shoulders. Imagine the conspirators meeting in shadows, their whispers like the rustling of the fates' loom. They weren't just plotting murder, they were wrestling with destiny. Each man a pawn in a game far older than Rome itself. Then comes the Ides of March. Caesar, warned by a soothsayer, warned by his wife's own nightmares of his statue flowing with blood, walks toward the Senate. He is walking into history, into legend. He sees the soothsayer and jests, "The Ides of March have come." And the chilling reply comes from the shadows. "I, Caesar, but not yet gone." Inside, the trap is sprung. The senators, his colleagues, his friends surround him. The first dagger strikes, then another, and another Caesar fights back, a cornered lion. But then, through the crowd of faces twisted by fear and fury, he sees him, Brutus, his friend, his confidant, perhaps his son. With his dagger raised, Brutus steps forward. In that moment, time freezes. It's not just two Romans in a bloody Senate house. It's Zeus and Cronus. It's the eternal cycle of power and betrayal. Caesar, seeing the face of the one man he thought he could trust, stops fighting. He pulls his toga over his head, not just to hide his face, but to surrender to a fate worse than death. The final words whispered weren't a plea, but a question that has echoed through eternity. "Et tu, Brute? You too, my child?" The betrayal wasn't the daggers. The mortal wound wasn't a physical one. It was the cut from Brutus. A cut so deep it severed the past from the future and plunged Rome into a new age of civil war. Brutus believed he was saving the Republic, but in killing the man, he birthed the emperor, the very thing he sought to prevent. Is that not the cruelest irony of the gods? That in trying to escape our fate, we often run right into its arms. Brutus, the hero of the Republic, became the catalyst for its final death. A mortal playing out a divine tragedy, leaving an echo that reminds us, even on Earth, the shadows of Olympus are long, and the quarrels of the gods are never truly over. They are simply replayed with mortal blood. For more mythological videos, visit my channel, like and subscribe.